Good morning, everybody.
Hi.
I think Susan said she might not be able to make it this morning. So with that, it looks like everybody else is here. Cute new haircut, Carla.
Oh, thank you.
I haven't seen you in a while. Maybe it's not a new haircut, but last time I saw you had long hair.
Well, I just got it cut.
Yeah, okay. So if Amy, you want to go, I'll call the meeting to order, and the meeting of the Behavioral Health Policy and Funding Committee, the Board of Health, to order, and ask Amy to please call the roll.
Sure. Corey Tello,
Here.
Carla Pohl,
Here.
Anna Eisner,
Here.
Judy Buchanan,
Here.
and then Susan Schaefer isn't with us, and then Maureen Solers is with Mental Health First Aid. I said it wrong, didn't I, Maureen? Solers.
Dollars, like dollars.
Solers, Mental Health First Aid, and then Taylor Davis with Behavioral Health, and then Samantha Vasquez with the State's Attorney's Office.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning, Maureen. Appreciate your time.
Anytime.
I was going to go back to my agenda here.
And Maureen was going to give an update and answer your questions on mental health first aid at the beginning of the meeting, and then she's got to jump off for another meeting.
Okay, so yeah, I think we had on the first topic on the agenda was just kind of an update, and I apologize, I'm sitting outside and there's a car starting, so can you hear me? I'll mute so you don't have to hear that, but anyway, I'll let Amy and Maureen go ahead and give us a kind of an update on mental health and mental health first aid.
Sure, Maureen, you can go ahead.
So I'm not sure what questions that you have. I'll give you an update of what we've been doing since the first of the year. We did, at the request of the Board of Health, make sure that we had at least one mental health first aid course scheduled every month for for 2021. Two of those courses we didn't we ended up canceling because we didn't have enough people signed up. But we have done probably 3 community courses so far this year. And then District 87 approached us. They got a grant to improve their mental health, or work on the mental health of their entire school system. And they want to train all of their staff in youth mental health first aid. And so we've been working with them and the Center for Human Services to train their staff. We've done 6 youth mental health first aid courses with District 87 so far. And that's been very successful. They've requested that the trainers be from the Center for Human Services, because those trainers have the most experience, and they want to make sure that those courses are, run smoothly. And then the Board of Health helped us fund a instructor trainer for adult trainers in April. We trained 5 trainers specifically for McLean County, and 4 of those trainers are just biting at the bit to start training. And so on Tuesday the 29th, we have our first adult class since that instructor trainer, and 2 of those trainers will be there, and at least one of them will actually do a small piece of the instruction. So they're not so the instructor is really focused on the curriculum that is for the all virtual instruction, or a virtual or a online plus in person. And that curriculum it's the same information, but it's a different structure than the 8 hours of in-person training or in-person curriculum. And so they don't want to do an 8-hour in-person course until they've like sat through and watched one. So on July 21st, we're having as many of our new instructors, plus we've invited our instructors who haven't taught in over a year, who's they're maybe feeling rusty in their skills, to come to an all-day class that we're sponsoring to help, where Nona and Megan from the Center for Human Services will teach that 8-hour in person. It probably won't end up being 8 hours because we won't do like all of the exercises, but they'll go through that 8-hour training so that the new folks plus the folks who haven't trained for a while can watch it, can hear it, can follow along in their training manuals and ask questions and hopefully be a little more comfortable. Because
So it's a refresher course. It's really
Exactly.
refreshing their training
Yeah.
skills. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. That's a great idea.
I thought it was really great that Megan and Nona were willing to give a day of their time to set that up. And so I already have RSVPs for that, and it looks like it'll be a good day. So they'll be able to see, you know, the curriculum that they didn't get in that instructor training for the virtual and blended, and see how it matches. It's just, you know, in a different format, and ask questions and hopefully then feel very comfortable stepping up and training in person. Then
And that's in addition to you're also going to do a just new trainer of trainers training as well.
exactly. Then the Board of Health very beautifully answered our call to help us bring a youth instructor training course to McLean County. So we have scheduled that for August 18th to the 20th. I'm hoping that our original marketing pieces will be approved today, so that Monday we can start our recruiting. I mean, we have been recruiting without, you know, marketing pieces, but Monday we'll start getting that out and looking for instructors who want to teach youth mental health first aid, because we know that CHS is working with you know, District 87, and those are going to be a lot of courses. So those will be two trainers that we're not going to ask to do more community classes. So we need some folks who can teach youth for the community. And we hope to get 5 or 6 more McLean County people into that August 18th to 20th. Now, we were asked by the Board of Health to really focus on recruiting from agencies that serve a lot of youth. And just to help you understand, like with District 87, we offered to have them send people to either this course, or we talked about them sending some of their staff, you know, to another instructor training. And they feel that it's financially more feasible for them to bring in outside trainers, because it's like one less person that they have to worry about finding a sub for, and then also when it comes to the learning, a lot of folks give more attention and more credibility to outside trainers than somebody that they know in their own building or from their own agency. And so they didn't want to have an internal training. Now, I haven't
So-
talked to.
Can I interrupt just for a second, Maureen?
Uh-huh.
So, but my understanding is Unit 5 does have their own, I know Roseanne Dietrich, I don't know what her last name is now,
Uh-huh.
but she is a Unit 5 social worker, and
Right.
she is a mental health first aid trainer, and she does Unit 5's training to a large extent. Is that
Yes.
your
She
understanding?
has in the past. I don't know what she's doing now. And so I have not connected with Unit 5 yet. And I'm definitely gonna connect with the Regional Office of Ed, because they do already have one adult mental health first aid trainer. And I know that they were interested in having at least one for the youth. So we'll see where Unit 5 and the Regional Office of Ed come in with that.
I get the point I just wanted to make is that, as always, every district is going to want to do it their own way. So
They-
we
they-
we
you're
never can get a one, and we
Mhm.
just can't assume we're ever going to have a one size fits all model. So,
You're right.
but I think it's just vitally important. That's
Mhm.
why we have as many constituencies across the spectrum of entities and agencies and districts, and like churches and YMCA or whatever it might be that get trained in this, so that we just can grab a trainer in a way that can work quickly as needed.
I'll also reach out to Scott at Tri-County Tri-County Schools, because Scott, I don't remember his last name, superintendent, he was a trainer himself.
Hogan.
Hogan, yeah, and he also had a couple of his social workers as trainers in the past, and so I'll reach out to him, and then, like you said, Corey, we'll just massively put this out and see who is interested. We did get a really good group of trainers for the adult class, and most of them are very excited about doing this. And I make sure when we recruit somebody to be a participant in this instructor training that I talk to them and tell them what's expected, because we often will have one or two who will be all excited about it and then realize what a big commitment it is, and then they're like, oh, I don't have that kind of time. And so we've been more successful when I've reached out and said, okay, here's the commitment. And in the past, way in the past, we used to have a letter of commitment that we asked people to sign before signing them up. And I think we're going to try that again. And so the letter of commitment, it says, this course typically costs $2,200 for you to take. Your agency is sponsoring you, and we're charging $250. And we feel it is important that the agency pay something for them to understand that they're making a commitment. And then we say, you're making a commitment to attend the course completely. You're not going to miss it, even an hour of it. And you're also committing then to teach 6 courses for our McLean County community. And so, when I talk to them on the phone, I'm like, you can teach as many courses as you like, and especially within your own agency or anywhere that you like. But we're asking that you at least teach 6 courses with the collaborative in the McLean County community. And we kind of got out of the habit of people signing that letter of commitment. And then with the pandemic and everything, we were just happy to get a class. And so some of the people who were in the last class said, you should have had us sign a letter of commitment. And both Sharon Mills and I were like, duh. And so we pulled that letter of commitment out, and we're going to ask people to sign it so that they really understand that they're committing to 2 years of training with us. So,
Can I interrupt you with a question?
please ask.
Yeah, so it sounds like from what you've said, we're developing a small army of people who are equipped to train. And I like your comment about getting commitments. Is there any kind of an organizational approach to, I don't know how many trainers we now have in the community. I was wondering if you know. And secondly, you know, whether there's something that says if I'm an organization that wants a trainer, there's a centralized place I can go, and then we can call upon our list of people who provided trainings. Just tell me I have to do 6 classes. Does that mean I have to find those classes on my own to teach? Or, you know, are somebody tracking what I've done and to fulfill my commitment? And Susan, I saw your hand up too. I'm sorry I jumped in, but do you have a question also?
Me? Yeah, I have a question for Maureen. And have you reached out to the city and the town because of the numbers of people that they have that work with youth, especially in the summertime? And actually some other programs that work throughout the year that they have youth. I mean, they have the aftercare, or at least I think normal used to. I don't know if they still do. And then, like I said, there's summer programs. You look at, you know, swimming pools and, you know, things like that might be beneficial for people that have a lot of contact with youth. And so I didn't know if you had reached out to them, because I think that they might be interested in at least talking to you about that.
It's been a while, so we'll definitely put that on our radar and
Like the parks and recreation programs, and even Heartland, all the Heartland classes for youth. And I mean, there's so many places that offer, like Susan saying, tons of summer youth programs.
Amy and Taylor hooked us up with Heartland Community College, and they in the end did not send someone to become a trainer, but they are definitely interested in working with us on courses. And so we will, like, now that we have trainers, be reaching out to them again this summer. So
I appreciate your morning, Maureen. I don't know how much time you have, and I don't know maybe if other members have questions of you.
Judy?
Yeah, I do. Just very quickly. First of all, Maureen, thank you very much. This is all exciting. I think I've been there from the beginning, and I know how much work you've had to put in to keep this thing moving, and it is a wonderful opportunity. I'm wondering if you are our hospitals. They had for a while. Are they continuing to host and be very gracious in providing in-kind rooms and snacks and lunches? Is that still all being done?
Absolutely. Our class on Tuesday, we'll have 15 community participants, and it will be at Carle Health and Fitness Center. Both Carle and OSF are hosting 3 to 5 courses a year on our monthly calendar. And then, so we're hiring another AmeriCorps member, and she's the ISU graduate student in social work, and she's going to start July 12th. And her focus then will be on faith and rural outreach. So she'll be working with, you know, reaching out to faith communities and especially rural communities. And Judy, we just communicated yesterday about the mental health first aid for older populations. And we had been looking at that and working with Patricia Martin to find a place to host that. And so, yes, we'll definitely be looking at that too. And you have another question, Judy?
In fact, thank you. I might just add that I did reach out to Maureen at the request of our fearless leader on the action plan, Susan. She's asked myself and another person to come up with a small report for the revised edition of the plan having to do with mental health and the aging community. And so I was learned about mental health first aid for the aging population and was excited that Maureen, in fact, they already had it on their radar. So that, just kind of a heads up, Susan, I think that'll be one of those can-do recommendations that we'll be offering for the plan. In addition to, and I think we need to be mindful that our hospitals have been a partner with us from the beginning, and that's a very strong partnership, and they cover a lot of territory in our county in terms of square miles and people, et cetera. So that's a good partnership. Have you, Maureen, or other members of the team you're working with had a chance to sit down with our public affairs coordinator just to talk about some of the maybe new or innovating ways we can reach out as we try to reach out, like you said, to rural or faith communities? Have we engaged Marianne in any conversation about how best to do that?
Marianne and I had about a 15-minute conversation the week before last, and I'm in the middle of writing a report and finishing up our strategic plan. And so when I'm finished with that for my program, then Marianne and I will have an appointment to work on, really promoting this instructor trainer course coming up, and then meet with our AmeriCorps, have our AmeriCorps member be part of the plan with Marianne to, figure out how to start marketing outside of email. Because we can market very well with email, but we did with the hospitals lose they used to mail a catalog to everybody, but both hospitals have stopped doing that. And so
and that's why I think that it might be helpful, and I encourage us to use our resources. The hospitals have really stepped up, and Marianne brings some experience in some ways of reaching people. Here we are, almost post-pandemic, and things have changed. So I'm glad you're beginning that conversation. And again, I thank you for staying with this.
Sorry, Judy. I would like to request, because I know we're trying to move this along, I would like to request that there is a written marketing plan developed with you're the people you just named, with Marianne, yourself, the AmeriCorps person, and that you give that to us in writing what the marketing plan is. And it doesn't, it can be bullets. It doesn't have to be a narrative, but just you would list all the stakeholder constituency groups that you're going to reach out to, because, Chestnut has a constant, they call it constant contact. It's an email system that goes out to just about like a bazillion people. And so even to put it on that, or, just think about all those things. And then there's been numerous stakeholder lists created by United Way, by, you name it. There's stakeholder lists of youth, anybody that would touch a youth. And so we should really make sure we're tapping into those already developed lists, because they already have emails and everything else attached to them. So I would really suggest we, as Judy said, let's use resources that are already done. That's what we got to get better at in this community. There's so much going on, and we got to keep connecting it, and using what's already been done, so we're not reinventing the wheel every time. So I would request a written marketing plan.
Okay.
And also, my other question is,
not to belabor the point, but part of the reason I think Chestnut has been so successful in some of those things is that they have people dedicated to working on that very aspect of their programming. So, we're in a good position now too. So that's all I have to say. But thanks, Maureen.
And Maureen, I would also ask, we pay so much money to the mental health first aid certification entity. Megan has been a trainer forever, and obviously because of what she does every day, could not be a better person. Is there ever an opportunity that she could become a certified trainer for our county, so that we are not always having to pay the big organization the $25,000 they want every time they come in and do a training? It would be, again, big long range thinking. Is that something we should be working toward, and is that possible?
I have had a conversation with Megan about that. And the National Council is a little, it would be a huge commitment on Megan's part, and they would not, at the time that we really looked into it, which was pre-pandemic, they would not allow somebody to only be looking at a small area. And so, we can have another conversation with our connection at the National Council and talk about that. But at the time, it wasn't feasible, and Megan didn't feel like she had the time to really commit to that, because it's a huge.
And maybe it's not Megan. I mean, maybe we think about, and as you're doing these trainer of trainings, maybe we try to identify, is there somebody who has a better amount of time? I mean, it's just a thought. I just think over time it would be really good for our county to have a certified trainer in the county.
I'll have that conversation with our connection at the National Council. Yeah.
Let's not forget that Megan is critical to continuing the good work of Mobile Crisis. So let's not pull her away for a minute from that area.
Yeah, she probably isn't the right person, but there may be somebody that, that could be their passion, and really it's just explore.
This is a passion for Megan, and it is a filler upper where, the crisis team takes her energy and the mental health first aid, builds it back up. I don't want to forget Hannah's question about when we train trainers, part of that letter of commitment says what the collaborative will do for that trainer. And yes, we are happy to work with anybody that wants a training. All they have to do is contact me or Sharon Mills at the Area Health Education Center at ISU, and we will work with them to find a co-trainer, to make sure they have all the materials they need, to get all of their people scheduled in the learning management system if it's going to be a blended or virtual training. And so that's part of what the health department is really committed to doing, is to be that support person for the trainer, so that what the trainer has to do is make sure they're prepared for the curriculum, and the health department really takes the administration part off of their shoulders. So I've got Danielle, and my office support person, who works with me 6 hours a week, plus we'll have the AmeriCorps person. And what we try to do is all that paperwork, administrative piece of it. So the trainer really has to focus on, what's the curriculum? Am I prepared to teach? They, show up and teach. We even have a bin of all of the materials that they'll need for that day, that either they or their co-instructor will pick up from us. And it's got everything from, markers and flip chart paper to handouts and the books, that they need. So our goal as the lead of that mental health first aid collaborative is to take as much of that administrative piece off of the trainers, because really surrounding a training, it can be about 6 hours of administrative, from registering your class and all of your folks that are in the class. If you're collecting the registrations, now we're asking people to pay, and thank you guys for helping to smooth over how we can do that payment system. It's still not easy, but it's getting better. And so all of that administrative piece, our collaborative helps to do, so the trainers just get to train. And that's
which is fabulous. But real quickly, because I know we're trying to be quick on time here, can you tell us very quickly the answer to Hannah's question, which is, do you as the collaborative, do you also track, are you also the place where people can call in if they say, I really need to have somebody come and do a training for my group? And so and do we have, that needs to be part of the marketing plan too, is like, how do people know how to access you to get a training for their organization?
Yeah.
And maybe that, because I don't think on our website and stuff, I don't think that's real clear. I mean, I see your schedule. You've got the nice grid of, what of the schedules coming up, everything. But I don't know always that it's real easy to say, if I want a training, how do I start? So I would love to see that as part of that marketing plan too. And then also, you also track, am I right, every training that's done, who does it. So every trainer knows how many hours they've put in. I mean, you track that for them.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah, and so, that the mental health first aid piece is on the behavioral health part of our website, and I haven't really had anything to do with that, but I will take a look at it and work with Taylor and Amy to get that on there. That's a good idea. But yeah, I will, next time you guys meet, I'll try to have some stats for you, like where we're at for 2020, 2021, so that you have an idea of what your investment has done. And then I don't know how often you meet, but we'll try to make sure that we have our marketing plan ready for your next meeting as well. And we really appreciate your support. It is so much easier to get this done knowing that we have the backing of the health department and the Board of Health.
You got it.
We do. Thank you. And now that Taylor is a trainer, she'll be able to tell you more too. I know. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer what I can. Well, bless you all.
We just value it and value all the work you're doing. So on that, thank you so much on other things. Okay.
You're welcome.
I think Hannah's having some internet difficulties here. And I don't know who you want to keep going with this meeting, Carla or Maureen.
Anna, are you just
Can
on
you hear me
mute?
now? Can you hear
Yep.
me now? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
In a hotel, unfortunately, and I was outside, and I think I just need to be inside. So my apologies. And I see Maureen's gone. Thank you. And that was really useful information. I think I was glad to hear about it. And I think the idea of keeping track of maybe how many trainings are now being done with all these greatly trained people would be helpful. And if we're going into the schools, I think from our end, maybe how does that connect with our embedded schools funding? But anyway, Amy, I think you're up next for a report if you want to just share any highlights with us. Don't need to go.
Sure. And I can be quick. So a lot of what I'm going to share, I am going to also have in the Board of Health packet for July, but I was just going to give you guys some highlights. We have a logic model that we're following for 2021, the behavioral health program that we created at the end of 2020, just to have some goals for us to work on throughout the year and have a focus. So this kind of took the place, if you remember, of that work plan that I used to provide updates on. And so then this year was a logic model instead of that, to have a little more, just to make a little more sense. But anyways, things that we're really working on within the behavioral health program, some of our highlights is increasing awareness on trauma-informed care practices internally and in the community. And then we're also just trying to be very mindful of our current participation in community collaborations and initiatives, and thinking about future collaborations. That also includes like every quarter, Taylor and I have been very strategic in looking at how much time we spend in collaborations. And just, you guys know this, but we also support the 377 Developmental Disability Board. And so that's supposed to be about 25% of our time. And it's interesting because that side of the world doesn't seem to like collaborate or meet as much as the behavioral health side of the world. Behavioral health like meets a lot. And then, so just kind of for you guys' information too, Taylor and I know a lot of you are familiar with the Human Service Council and that model where a lot of the behavioral health programs, schools, and the community come together, share information, resources. Taylor and I are actually going to host something very similar. It's called IDDC, Intellectual Developmental Disability Collaboration. And so that will start in July. So we've been just trying to be really, really mindful of our collaborations and even very excited to have DD boards come together, and even had a conversation recently with Mark First. Like the developmental disability world has a lot of behavioral health needs. There's going to be a lot of anxiety, co-occurring disorders, depression, and how does the behavioral health world, and it's going to look different than someone that doesn't have a developmental disability. So just kind of starting to talk more about like how can this population also be better served in the behavioral health world, and instead of it being so divided. And so that's what we're super excited about. And the last thing that we really, and we are trying to just increase our presence in the community, in the DD community, but it's specific to the Board of Health and actually the 377 board as well. We're just really trying to be more mindful of the RFP process, which is what this board has really talked a lot about. So in the Board of Health report for July, I share Q1 and Q2, kind of like our evaluation of those goals. And some of it is just tracking output, like this is how many activities we participated in, this is how much collaboration time we're using, this is kind of where we're at in different areas. But it seems like that has been very helpful for Taylor and I to do that, just to have some really, we're very structured. So just to have that good structure of, you know, thinking about what we're doing. Outside the logic model, which actually is not outside the logic model, the things that like specific things that we've been working on do connect to the logic model, but the things that we've been working on too is we are almost done with our first outreach effort. And so we were really like youth mental health is a huge concern right now. And CDC and Mental Health America and others are saying the youth are actually the ones that have been impacted the most by this pandemic because their brains aren't developed fully. They don't have life experiences that helps with resiliency. Parents are struggling. And so it's really hard, you know, to be the parent you strive to be when you're just really struggling to get through things. And so there's just so much. And then just kind of the flip side of that, we're learning that the aging population, there was a lot of challenges as far as like isolation and fear because they were having the most physical health impacts, but they're actually, as far as mental health, the population that seems to be doing the best. Not that they're not struggling, everyone is struggling, but they're saying aging population, they've had more life experiences, resiliency. This isn't, you know, their first go around on, you know, challenges. And so as far as mental health, isolation, definitely like the social connection has been, as we know, like the biggest concern. But as far as overall mental health, that's great to hear that our aging population is doing the best, still needs support. But again, youth seems to be suffering the most. And so anyways, Taylor and I, we're finishing up our first outreach project. We're just kind of trying to figure it out, but we partnered with Integrity Counseling. They're doing a very supportive parenting class at Eastview Christian Church for the summer. And so we've created toolkits for them that has provided many resources, different cards. There's information on how to contact PATH, CHS. Here's all these coping skills. We provided journals for the adults. And then for the youth, we created a couple of crafts like age appropriate, got them journals. a couple books, kind of like on a social story on this is how I talk about my feelings. So we've learned with our outreach, it probably just makes sense for us to try to collaborate with different agencies and different things, different initiatives, instead of trying something on our, being solo. And so we're very excited. We're finishing that up. So we're excited to see how that goes. And it was a very small outreach project, but with it being our first time, we just want to see how it goes and see if that's something that we want to look more into in the future to help support. Again, we chose that one because the youth, the families, here's some additional resources over the summer. So we'll see how that goes and if that's something we continue to do more of. Of course, mental health first aid, you guys just heard about that, and Taylor is now a trainer. She's going to do her first in-person training in August. And so we're very excited to be part of that collaboration and talking more with Maureen and that collaborative on how the behavioral health program can be supportive of expanding that. And then as far as trauma-informed care, trauma-informed care has been a really important focus, especially as we go into recovery. Just thinking with like the trauma-informed care principles, like emotional, physical safety, transparency, mutual support, cultural humility. Like we need that desperately at post-pandemic. Is something we needed anyways, but now just a lot of people, it's been a very challenging year and a half, so we absolutely need that. And with Taylor being a part of the behavioral health program, she's the reason why we have been able to just really expand in so many ways. If it was just me, I would not be able, I don't have the capacity to be able to expand it, but adding Taylor to the behavioral health program has just been such a huge asset, and she's just done so much great work. I kind of like tease her, like she's making me look really good, and so I appreciate that.
Amy, can I interrupt a minute and just make sure?
Sure.
I know there is a trauma-informed collaborative that's been put together, and I know you and Susan, I believe, and Taylor attend that. I don't know whether it's you or
Yes.
Taylor,
Mhm.
but I mean, I think we
Yeah.
need to also make sure everybody understands that there is this group that's been pulled together from a variety of entities that their whole focus together is to work on trauma-informed and get it deeply embedded into the county. Is that
So,
accurate?
yeah, absolutely. And this is my draft of the Board of Health report. I think it's pretty much finalized. So just to clarify, the trauma-informed care work that Taylor and I are doing right now has the county, which I have that in here, we do participate in the countywide trauma-informed or resilience-oriented initiative, and that is really like a macro look at trauma-informed care, like within the community. How does McLean County become trauma-informed? And so Taylor and I participate in that. There's other, there's law enforcement, the school districts, there nonprofits. There's a lot of community members that participate in that. And so that started, I think, the beginning of this year that started. But when I talk a lot about what we do as far as trauma-informed care within the behavioral health program, I started that in January 2019. So it's going on 2.5 years since we have been working on the health department becoming a trauma-informed care agency. And so that has been very internal and work, we have a trauma-informed care committee, we have trauma-informed care subcommittees, and you guys have received information on that, but that has just really been to highlight. Those subcommittees came out of the pandemic. So looking at how to increase communication and support staff's mental overall well-being. We have a diversity, equity, and inclusive subcommittee that started meeting to really look at how can we just be part of that instead of just being very deliberate and making sure that we're incorporating all of these principles into the things that we do. But what's really been cool too, so Taylor does the trauma-informed care newsletter, and I gave you guys an example of that.
Excellent. That's excellent. Haley, thank you so much for that.
In In the Board of Health report, I will give you guys volume 2 and volume 3. We did Trauma Informed Awareness Day internally. That was May 25th. This year, you guys will see there's pictures. We ordered shirts. People bought shirts that work at the health department to support Trauma Informed Awareness Day. And then Taylor does monthly topics every month for each health department staff meeting on. Right now, it's been really a focus on mental health and self-care. We will get more into the trauma-informed care principles. But again, it was just the pandemic. We want to make sure staff's overall well-being, promoting and encouraging that. On July 21st, if you guys remember, the National Councils Now for Mental Wellbeing, they provided us with a technical support grant that Taylor was very active in. And that ends in July. And the last thing that we're going to do is a training to all of the supervisor staff called What Can We Learn from Crisis? And it really looks at that post-traumatic growth, recovering from COVID. And so National Council isn't coming to the health department. Supervisors are going to meet in person, but they will interact with us virtually. And so we will actually send that link to the Board of Health members, kind of like an intro to trauma-informed care. And if the board members want to, or we're going to send the link to that training because it's been recorded already, but then they'll do it again live for us. And so if you guys in your free time want to look at that or listen to it, you have that. So yeah, so there's a lot going on, but yes, so just to kind of, again, just clarify with the trauma-informed care work, we're doing a lot internally. It's kind of like our home. We want to make sure we're mental health, healthy at home, and then we are participating with the BHCC, more of that county-wide. Sorry, I have a noisy background. But also the really cool thing is we have some different agencies reaching out to us. And so Heartland, Head Start, they were partners with us on that technical support from National Council for Mental Wellbeing. And so we've really worked together on with them. Like they're working on becoming a trauma-informed agency. It looks a little bit different than what we're doing, which is really cool because then we're able to kind of like compare and like copy off of each other in our next moves. And Heartland Community College, Faye Freeman Smith, that's on the Mental Health Advisory Board. She has a strong interest in us collaborating together. And it's just really been kind of like finding that niche where that collaboration fits. But it sounds like Heartland's looking at overall wellness or trauma-informed care. And so we may be able to collaborate with them more. So anyways, so that's what's going on. Those are kind of some very high level things outside of course.
Amy, can I just make a point? I think what, first of all, fabulous job on all that you're doing to really drive that deeply into the health department, and that is wonderful. And I also love that you are coaching or kind of co-coaching other entities in how to do that. I just wanted to add that the forum that obviously BHCC and the health department, everyone is, they are looking at a session that would be about an entity could learn how to become a trauma-informed entity. And so that's pretty wonderful. And I'm guessing the collaborative and so I just wanted to, again, I'm so sorry, but I feel like there is this burning need right now to make sure that every one of us that sits on this committee and on the Mental Health Advisory Board deeply understands the big initiatives around big topics and big priorities that are happening all over, and that we have got to not lose sight of that. Everything we do should be connected back to those big initiatives so we can use the synergy and the shared knowledge and the shared pushing each other to get to the next level. So we have to be so mindful of everybody has to be understanding of those big initiatives. And so thank you. And I think, Amy, if you and Taylor can just keep helping us, put everything under umbrellas, like everything that's happening that you learn about, help us figure out what umbrella it goes under. And I know that's what Susan's doing with the Mental Health Action Plan, but I just feel like any small thing too that, comes along, we just all need to be thinking those big umbrellas so that our work is so coordinated. And Susan, I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
So yeah, thank you, Amy, for that report. And now echoing Corey's comment about that, it occurred to me as I listened to Maureen's discussion, there's lots of references to collaborations, and those are kind of informal in a way, at least they seem to be, of people. So it might be helpful, follow up on what Corey said, is to get a better directory of the collaborations and who's collaborating on doing what, to see where those overlaps are occurring. And maybe you're doing that already, Susan, with the plan. So it'd be great to see that, because obviously there's a lot of energy and a lot of work going on involving a lot of different people. But you're right, the piece that really needs to be there is to make sure they're all coordinated. But anyway, so why don't we move on? I know we'll have a second shot at Amy at the Board of Health meeting for questions. So unless anybody has a burning, I don't want to cut anybody off from a question they might have, but if it's something you think you can hold to them, then move on to the RFP and application item. And I see Samantha's on the line, and I just want to thank you, Samantha, for the email. Did all of you get a chance to read her email from yesterday about her answer kind of to our questions? So the documents you provided, Amy, in the packet may or may not be relevant at this point in time if we're kind of following up on Samantha's recommendation. So are you there, Samantha? Yeah.
I'm here.
Great, thank you. I know I had two questions, and I'll just start out with that. I think at this point, maybe we should focus on, if we have questions, of what Samantha's recommendation is. But in your kind of outline of how to walk through this process of, if we just want to narrow it to people who are providing the programs that we think are core programs already, on one, let me see if I can pull it up. So on your email, it was under number, so it's number 2. That after you've determined which contracts you want to extend, offer grant applications to the public. So what does that mean
So
practically speaking?
basically what I was suggesting is that after you decide whose contract you would like to basically renew or extend, then you can use whatever remaining funds you have to basically ask for more programs or proposals.
Okay. So what you've outlined is that we could just work directly with these existing people who already have the contracts. Is that how we would do this that was a great list of questions, but just reach out to them individually and say, if you'd like to renew, please respond to these questions that we're going to ask you and indicate your interest. Is that as simple as it gets?
Yeah, I really think that there should be a list of factors that you're using to judge why or why not, because you might say we want to renew with these folks and not these folks, and so you have to decide what is your criteria for that decision. But other than that, I think the easiest way is to extend a contract that's already in place.
So what would that look like? I mean, what would the actual document look like if we were doing a grant renewal, an RFP renewal? What would that look like?
Well, I guess that's something that Amy and I could work on. I'm not sure, but that would just be, first of all, you'd have to decide which ones you think. I guess you probably need the information before you decide, right? You could ask your current people to give you this information, and then I don't know how you want to go about selecting which ones to offer a renewal to.
So you're saying, you're suggest, and I realize we're kind of figuring this out as we go, but so you're suggesting that the first step would be preparing a list of questions for the entities that we already have contracts with, that we're reasonably certain we want to extend. And so literally it's just a list of questions. So it's not like a formal application. It's just going to be a list of questions, but it's going to be uniform, but that would go to each of those entities. Is that what you're suggesting?
It could be, yeah, it could definitely be like that.
Okay.
And then I think, Samantha, you provided a sample kind of list of questions that have been used by the State Department of Human Services. This sort of
But
answer, and
was
those-
that for extension grants through DHS? Or was that just things that they ask anytime they are doing a contract? Or you're saying, no, it does say, so is that the questions that DHS uses for extending existing contracts?
They call it negotiating a contract, so I'm not sure if they use it in the front end or for extended one, but that's their criteria. So I thought that was a good model, at least.
Well, how does that match up with the questions that are on our RFP now? I mean, I think there's a lot of overlap, right? Amy, would you agree?
and I
Yes,
think
and-
when you look,
Oh, sorry.
no, that's all right. I mean, you provided the documents and it looked pretty similar to what we currently ask. Let me get the group back on something though, before we get too much into the details, just to be crystal clear that it has been, I think, our consistent position that given the amount of money we have to award and where we see the need, that we are all recommending that we reach out to current grantees and the ones that we funded last year to request them to submit something to us. Sorry, it's a very convoluted question. To be refunded, that we're not opening it up to other, we don't want to open up at this point a more general RFP that goes out published in the paper, anybody, all comers apply. So before we go, I mean, we got to be clear today if that's what we want to, and I thought we said that, and I thought the Board of Health approved that approach. So yeah, Judy.
Thank you. And Samantha, I think this is a question for you. In addition to that communication with an agency that we've determined we probably will extend their contract, does that preclude us from, for example, an agency that provides adult psychiatric follow-up? But yet we're not saying we're closing adult psychiatric follow-up. We would be funding an agency that we now fund, but are we still able, if we think we have the money or it might be available, to try to capture new proposals for, say, psychiatric follow-up?
Yeah, I think so. And the reason why is because at least my suggestion to you is a two-part process. First, deciding who you want to continue funding, and then once you've decided that, if you have any leftover funds in other areas of need that you would like to fund, then request for proposals, maybe not so formally as in the paper, but as a grant to others that can come forward to apply for it.
And a follow-up question to that, on the list, and thank you for giving that to us, and I recognize there are duplications with what we already asked, but something that I know we are very interested in, for those agencies we will extend or renew, as well as others, as to who they are serving, but who they are going to be unable to serve. Is there a waiting list with our dollars or with other dollars anticipated? Who do you expect to serve? And I guess I'm trying to get at a question that would help us evaluate the need that is there that may not be met. And again, I'm not saying we're going to meet that, but I'd like for us to capture that in some way, because we're facing a period now when I think we need to publicly acknowledge that there are going to be some unmet needs, as well as we continue and others continue to explore other funding streams to build the case for getting a piece of any of those funding streams, we would need to know, who do you think CHS, how many on your waiting list? How many of those people will not be served by any anticipated funding that you now think you're going to receive? Can we get into requesting that of an agency that we want to extend? Because it's a new line of questioning.
Yeah, definitely. And you can develop, the criteria that you want. I just basically copied from the administrative code. So if you think that that is more tailored to what our needs are here, then definitely we can put that on there.
Well, thank you. Because I think that we need to acknowledge that. We know that is the case, that the unmet needs. What do they look like? What do you agency expect in the way of what kind of additional funds are you going after? What do you expect is going to happen? And how will you meet that unmet need or those people that are on your waiting list? So thank you, Samantha.
Carla, we can't hear you. Or Hannah, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so I totally agree that, we have to figure out if there's any gaps that connect to our core areas that, are going to be above what have existed previously. But here's I think our big elephant in the room to also grapple with. There is money coming in from American Recovery Act to lots of entities that, and through the state governor's budget for mental health and federal flow throughs and all of that kind of stuff. So a question for us, I think, is do we do due diligence in trying to figure out, can some of the things we've been funding that we believe are core, are there going to be other funding streams through the American Recovery Act for the next couple of years that we should factor into our decision making? Or should we simply act as if we're going to go forward with the way we've gone forward before and not try to, figure out any other, and assuming the agencies will do that for us? How do we handle that elephant? I guess that's my big question. And I don't know if Susan has more knowledge about who in our area might be looking at those new funds coming in and how to figure that all out.
So I see Judy had her hand up too, and then Susan. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Corey, I think that was the intent of my last comment in question. While making no promises for those organizations that we determine we want to extend, we know that they are providing some of our core services. I think to build the case for capturing any of those additional dollars that we think are coming over the next couple of years, we're going to be in line with a whole lot of other people, but we have to have.
No, I'm talking about monies the entities are going to get themselves. I'm not talking about.
But we don't know that. And again,
dollars. I'm talking about are some of the entities we've been funding, are they going to have access to additional dollars for the next couple of years?
And that's what we don't know.
And then how do we figure that out? And is that a need we have to figure out to make the best decision, or do we operate like we have? I'm just trying to figure out what is our.
Right.
How
I go back to we need to know what the need is. If we can't build a case, for additional need and getting some of those dollars, because there's so much unknown out there, and that's why I keep coming back to that need issue.
Susan, did you have something?
Yeah, I think we need to make sure we keep our focus on, yes, there's a lot of need. There's been a lot of need for many years, regardless of whether we have a pandemic that gives us a whole lot of money or not. However, our scope right now with this is the property tax dollars that get allocated, and that is what I believe we're looking at this point in time. And to speculate or to do anything with other monies that are coming in, yes, other agencies may be getting them from this, that, and the other place, with those funds, but for the purpose of the Board of Health, right now, we're focused strictly on the property tax dollars that are levied for this. So I think that that's really what, personally, I think that that's what we need to focus on right now, is that these are the property tax dollars we're going to get, or we're expecting to get for next year. And if we want to do these renewals, then let's do these renewals and get them done. And then worry about if there's any additional dollars to come in that we can say, here's a need that we have identified with our providers that we're funding, that then focus and try and work towards finding some of those other dollars from other sources in that respect. But right now, I think we just should worry about the property tax dollars that we have to allocate for services. That's my opinion.
That
Yeah.
helps, because I just think I think we have to figure that out I love that that we can decide together, is that the way we're going to go? That's important. Yeah.
And Carla, I see your microphone on, so.
I just wanted to ask Samantha a question, and you guys have to understand that in my past, I worked with an agency that was investigated by the FBI. So just because of a lot of shenanigans that are going on in this state, but we're also going on in another state. So the difference between the Board of Health and the county board and the way the administrative code was written, the county board are elected officials, and so that's why they are forced to, they have to use an RFP process, but we're volunteers, and so we don't need to use the RFP. Someone decided we didn't need to use an RFP process. Is that accurate?
I don't know exactly the reasoning, but the code, the county's code, is pretty explicit about where the funding comes from for the health department, and that it has to be, the budget for the health department is from the county board. The board approves the budget. We have to submit a budget to them every time. And so that structure is already set up, and I'm not exactly sure why they have this procurement process and the Board of Health wouldn't, but that's the way, at least it's written in the county's code at the moment. So the procurement process is not explicitly designed for boards of health.
Okay, I can't even begin to express how nervous I am that there's two separate procurement processes for boards in the same county. But if it's written in the code and that's legally binding, then I guess I'll be quiet. I'm just really, I can't even begin to tell you how nervous I am.
Appreciate you.
Well, what I was looking for is that authority. I was looking for the rules to tell us this is why we have to do it this way. And I mean, I can't tell you how much, I printed out all my statutes. I really just couldn't find the rules that said this is what must happen. It sounds like, based on historically what you've been doing, is that you've been following the procurement process under the other section, because that's basically what you've been doing, putting it on the pantograph, publishing it. It's after everything I've looked through, I don't find the requirement that is a must.
All right.
If I might just add, I think there are very few counties in the state that actually do provide funds for behavioral health the way we do. There are not that many 553 organizations. So I agree with Samantha. Historically, I think we're continuing to do it the way we have done it. There hasn't been a problem. But to Carla's point, that doesn't mean that we can't. But if we feel we can defend it, and Samantha's presenting documents that it looks like we can, I suggest we move on.
Okay.
Well, also wanted to you also raised another point in your email, Samantha, that may be relevant too, in that you distinguished something by which the county is purchasing services for itself, and that these are grants where we're making money available to other organizations to provide services. So there may be another element too of whether this is a true procurement in that sense too, Carla. I mean, you may want to think that, I mean, I appreciate your concern. So here's my question. It sounds like this could be something done as a sort of two-part process. One would be develop a set of questions that would include, I think, to Judy's point, questions about unmet need within that agency to be submitted to our current recipients and inviting them to reapply by answering these questions. Is that, and then we get that information back initially, and if we determine that based on those answers, maybe there's somebody we don't fund or don't fund at the level we did last year, there may be some dollars then left to open it up to a more general request for proposals. Does that sort of follow what you were listening, Samantha?
I have a question.
Yeah.
On that. I kind of was under the impression after reading all this, yeah, we can ask these questions, but basically saying, and I think Hannah, you could probably relate to some of this from just on the other county contracts that we get with vendors or whatever, or other services that we do, is that we just approach them and whomever it is and say, we would like to extend this contract for this many dollars, you know, kind of thing. Not necessarily, I mean, we can ask questions, but basically if, and I don't even remember what the numbers are, like baby fold. If we want to go ahead and do that for like I think it was like 75,000 or something like that. Just go to baby fold, say we'd like to continue this contract with this for 75,000. You know, utilizing the same criteria that we had, you know, already. And we already know there's a need. They've always said that
They
there's a need.
always have a waiting list, always. And
I mean,
it is,
all of these, every agency, you know, is going to say there's unmet need because there's unmet need. We all know that. And so to me, it's just pretty simple to go to them and say, this is how much money we're going to allocate to you. Well, you know, do you want this contract extended? I mean, and I think that that's how some of the contracts, Samantha, you can confirm. And like I said, Hannah, I believe, you know, from when you were assistant administrator, that that's what kind of things happened and how they happened. To me, I thought it was a pretty simple process. Unless it started wanting a bunch of increases, you know, kind of thing. But, you know, we approve them constantly all the time on our, you know, different board committees. You know, it's just a renewal contract, you know, from X, you know, place, and whether or not it's an increase in what it costs us, or in our cases, whether it's an increase of what we want to give them, you know, or if it's going to be fun, you know, whatever we want to give them, if it's going to be the same as it is this current year. You know, that's to me pretty simple and straightforward process.
And what feeling of the group, Judy?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Judy.
and I agree. I think that to the extent we can simplify it, and again, with Sam's, you know, wisdom and guidance here, but I'm looking at a page of the agency overview in the program description, page 9 of our packet. And, you know, we're going to ask the question about the estimated number of individuals that will be served specific to our funding. And then it said, if applicable, what is the estimated number of individuals that may be served in this program specific to other funding besides 553? And I think at that point, that wording could be used to help us document. And I'm, again, maybe we need to come up with very specific language, but I'd like to document what they are seeing as the need, what aspects of what you do will not be served with our money or from any other source. If we're going to try to build the case and send the message to our community that this is all well and good and we're going to continue, but particularly now, there is a continuing need out there. We haven't even begun to see the post-pandemic impact on kids. And I'm just looking for a way for us to capture that, so that we have it as revenue streams somehow become available. We get in line with a lot of other people, but we now have a case that we can build. So I know I'm belaboring it, but there's probably language to accomplish.
I think maybe we're talking about two different things. It sounds in one sense what Susan is saying is we know these agencies, we have funded them for many, many years. We know what they do.
Mhm.
So to just go back and say, we want to continue our relationship with you at this dollar amount. It doesn't negate or take away from the fact that we could also be asking those questions that you said, Judy. I mean, and that's part of, I think, Susan's mental health action plan and the overall kind of taking.
China, the CHIP, the China, all the initiatives, everybody's looking at, there's so many groups looking at.
To get a sense of where that unmet need lies, even within our funded agencies, but whether or not that has to be incorporated in our decision making to fund them, I guess is the question that's kind of, no, okay.
I wasn't
So-
suggesting, I was looking more for us capturing data that down the road, should we have access to any additional cents or dollars or pot of gold, that we're ready to say, here's the need. Okay.
And staying with your point, Hannah, so we keep ourselves, keep it simple. As Susan's suggesting, let's make this as forward as we can, and just going to existing agencies saying, here's what we would like to extend. You know, are we still in, contractual relationship with each other? But the thing I wanted to add, staying right on that, what are we going to do about embedded schools? Because we've talked about changing, instead of giving the dollars to CHS and to Chestnut, we've talked about giving it to the Regional Office of Education and letting the Regional Office of Education decide which. So, I mean, I think, are we talking about, we've always, for the last couple of years, we've done $100,000 because we've funded 5 entities at $20,000 a piece. So do we take that $100,000 and give it instead so that would be a new relationship to ROE, and let them decide what 5 entities that might be different than the 5 we're currently doing? Or for this year, do we just stick with what we've been doing to keep it really clean? Again, throwing that out to for us to discuss.
I guess that's the question. I mean, it sounds like we could choose to reach out to everybody but CHS is the embedded schools agency, but everything to CHS except the embedded schools dollars, and say, and that's an area where we have heard at least information about monies potentially coming to the schools through the Rescue Act, where we might legitimately want to look at what they're getting and seeing how, so just hold back on that, I guess is what I'm saying. Engage the others and then say, because there's potential change. And what we heard from Mental Health First Aid today, if they're doing a lot of training in District 87 and Unit 5, how does that impact how the embedded schools program runs? But
Anna, can I
alternatively,
say something about that? I want to answer your question on that. I want to be really clear to your question. The mental health first aid is education. It is not clinical services. Embedded schools is clinical services and consultation around kids with high need issues. It is not, mental health first aid is a totally different animal. The only thing that could overlap, to your point, is if it raises awareness of staff, they may decide, I want to make more referrals because now I'm aware that these 2 kids in my class that I just wanted, previously I just thought were behavior problems. Now I'm realizing there may be, mental health problems. So it may increase teacher awareness to make referrals, but that doesn't mean they go straight into embedded schools. I mean, there's a whole process of steps that a district takes to provide services. So it's not like there's a direct correlation between the two at all.
I understood that. I just was thinking more along the lines of it might increase awareness and referrals into the program. So what's a thought on embedded schools in terms of if we are looking at potentially just reaching out to agencies and saying, do you want to renew?
And since we now have a timeline, and Amy's, going to have to get some information out to agencies, unless we have had conversations with ROE and they're ready to go. I don't think we have a choice but to continue to work for embedded schools in the process we've been using. And maybe we can finalize during this calendar year going forward whether ROE will take that up in the future or not. But I don't know, that we're there.
Susan?
I do believe that, and Corey, I know that you've talked with Mark, and I do know that he was receptive to taking that on, if I remember correctly. So I think that there needs to have, before we would do a renewal for each one of those individual schools like we had, I think we need to have that conversation with Mark again, and then work it the same way as we do the drug court, specialty courts contract, and how that works. But I'm pretty sure that Mark is willing to take that on.
That's good.
From what
And
I've
I
had
think
conversations with.
we can
Mark
follow
has-
up with an MOU which documents that, then we're good. We could probably do it this year. Mhm.
Mark has indicated an interest in doing that. Obviously, as Hannah said, all 5 of the entities now are being served by Center for Human Services. So, I mean, I feel like, we can't ignore them in this process as far as getting input from them as well, too. But, I mean, do we feel like by moving it to ROE, we are going to, and knowing that CHS has kind of been the predominant one, and with the short time frame, as Judy mentioned, do we want to, I guess I'm just trying to decide, because Mark did talk about, he felt like he would need to put a committee together within his entity to, go through the requests from different schools. That's where it's interesting to me, because the American Recovery Act dollars coming into districts. And again, the only 3 districts that are being served by embedded schools are Unit 5, District 87, and Olympia. So, and that covers, a large number of the kids in the county. But my point is, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how we don't, if Center for Human Services, who has just recently hired 2 additional youth therapists to meet growing needs and to anticipate needs when school starts, I just want to make sure we don't do anything to mess with, that too. So, and that doesn't mean that ROE might not say we're going to continue to fund CHS predominantly because they're the ones that are doing the work. That's my only question, is how do we make sure we don't upset something that's kind of already started in motion?
And that may beg the issue of waiting.
Timeline may not be, our timeline is built on the notion that we put out something and advertise for some weeks in the newspaper and get documents back. So does our timeline change if we take this approach? And it may give us more breathing room to work out something on the embedded schools, because if we're simply, our funding, runs on our fiscal year. So it's more giving us the adequate time and agencies time to know to apply and to get it back and yada, yada, yada. So I'm just asking, I'm not sure that maybe we gain a month or something if we do it this way. I don't know what your feeling is, Amy.
Well, sure, we're going to gain time, because all we're going to do is go to them and say, hey, this is what we want to do. And this is how much money we're going to allocate. That's a pretty quick thing versus having them, sending this out, saying that this is the deadline, 2 weeks from now to have it in, and then us meeting again and reviewing all of this stuff and whatnot. Yeah, you're going to buy yourself a bunch of time and save everybody a lot of work, actually. And so even if by doing it that way, working through for embedded schools, working with Mark in the next month, I think that that could probably be wrapped up pretty quickly, and, you know, work with him to understand what our goals are on that, and not to mess up anything that, like you said, Corey, that, you know, CHS maybe has done to ramp up for more students needing services, because, you know, I mean, just like what we do with drug court and recovery court, whatever that MOU is and that contract is, and things like that, you know, it could be done, I would think, fairly quickly.
I think the thing we have to be really mindful of is that to be really careful about the transition, because if these schools that are currently being funded that are now used to having an embedded therapist and have built some of their systems of support around who's in their building to be the go-to people, and then that suddenly changes at a time when we know that the schools are going to be, the kids in schools are going to be at greater crisis level as they enter a new school year coming back in person. So I just would want to be really careful that we don't set something in motion that cuts off a service that a school has been counting on, and a relationship that has made them have the trust to refer and to have families have connections. Because again, remember, these people see these kids and families over the summer. So, I mean, I think we need to be mindful of being really careful about this transition. And so I'm all for taking it to ROE. I just want to make sure we don't do some damage as we make that transition.
Well, keep in mind also that our dollars are January 1 to December 31st. So these schools will have half of the next school year funded under our current contract. So any change we make would not be effective until January 2022. So it gives us time, I think, to really get a picture of what, yeah, Amy, am I wrong?
No, you're correct as far as the timeline. I did have something to add when you're done, Hannah.
That's all I was saying, because we're on the calendar year, not the school year. It's not an immediate. In the fall, things will change because the dollars that we have allocated and given for that would still be available until the end of the year.
Yeah, but it would be even worse to cut off services in January in the middle of a school year. That would be even worse if they've been counting on those services. So that's my point. Yeah.
That here to look at this and determine how best to do it. Not that we would ever get to that point, but yeah. Amy.
Thank you. So I did want to quickly bring up to just a reminder. So if we're looking at like the problem-solving court model, so we contract to court services, and then they subcontract with, you know, the 3 different agencies. So, and then the 3 different agencies have an MOU with the health or with the Board of Health. So, but that contract with problem-solving courts, they provide all of the reporting they turn in all of the reporting when it's due, just like the other agencies. So they collect the information from the people that the agencies they subcontract to. They collect all of that, they put it into one report, and then they turn that in, and then we use that each quarter. So I'm using that to say that would be a totally different model, that something ROE isn't used to. And I think that they need to be mindful of that, because the way it is set up right now is we contract with CHS, the 5 different contracts for whatever schools are a part of each contract. And then the schools have one outcome, that they provide data to CHS. CHS puts together all the reports, they track everything, and then they turn in the report. So if we switch that, that would, and I'm not saying anything against it, I just want everyone to be mindful of, if we switch that, the ROE, if we contract with ROE, then that puts more responsibility on them, because then they would be collecting information from CHS, because they would have the contract. They would have to put together the reports and then turn that in. And then they would, if they had that contract and we had like an MOU, I guess, with CHS, then the school would have to have a way too, then to provide the money to CHS if they're the contract holder receiving the funding. So not that I'm against any of that, but the model works really well with court services. However, this would be very foreign, very different for ROE, because it would put a lot more responsibility on them, which would give them more, I guess, like flexibility also, but it would put a lot more responsibility on them, and it would be a big change from what they are doing now.
To be fair to ROE, I think we would need to spell out, I mean, it would have to be, we have to provide a written document that would say, here is all of the responsibilities and expectations from ROE if they move into that role. And so I think they have to see it in writing and then decide, you know, are we prepared to do that for this coming year? Because again, it's going to be staff time, you're right. And it's going to be a lot of collaboration. You know, like right now, Amy, you meet on a quarterly basis with every one of those entities, right? And so that piece is important, because that keeps, I feel like that keeps a very important message about doing this with integrity. I mean, it just keeps everybody honest about what they're supposed to be targeting. And so, I mean, ROE would have to set up that quarterly reporting process and visiting time and all of that stuff. So I'm just, you know, I just want to be mindful of that. We're being fair to everybody, and also being mindful that we don't cut off services to a system that has now kind of incorporated this into their way of doing business. So all of that, I think first step has to be making sure ROE understands exactly what they're agreeing to.
So let me kind of bring this back, because I think, you know, we're following different threads here as we move forward. I'm hearing that we're comfortable, certainly with the current grantees, leaving embedded schools out of it, inviting them to apply for an extension of their contract, whatever we call it. And that we could do it, as Susan suggested, without much other than saying, we'd like to renew you. You received this much last year. We're asking if you'd like to be renewed at the same dollar amount for the next grant cycle. And I guess we have two ways to do that. One would be just to say, renew the contract without any further documentation from them, or the second piece would be to do it in a little different way, which would be to submit those questions that Samantha suggested, and then bring it back to us and say, we think based on these answers, we want to renew with those. So I guess that kind of, we don't have an action item, so I don't know that we can do anything but just get a feel for right now whether we'd be comfortable with just go with renewal, and you know, whether we do it across the board with the contracts for the embedded schools is question number 2. But first, let's kind of get the group that we know it sounds like comfortable with renewing with out of the way. So any thoughts on which way you folks feel most comfortable going? Judy, I turned myself off.
Yeah, I must add that I do have to leave the conversation at 11 a.m. sharp, so I apologize for that in advance. But Hannah, I think I certainly feel that moving ahead with the extension as you've described it, and also again with the inclusion, and maybe it's an addendum to that or something, because I would not want to create the impression that while we ask for need, unmet need, waiting list, etc., that is not going to be a factor in our decision to renew. But I think it's important information to capture. So with that caveat, I certainly am supportive of extending where we are now, but also somehow capturing the information that, you know, about unmet needs.
Yeah, and so to be clear, you're kind of going with the idea Susan floated with, just saying, we know you, we know you're doing, based on your reporting, things look good, and we just invite you to renew the contract and not really request them or require them to provide any additional data. With the understanding that I think as we work with these organizations, it's certainly, we could say, we really want to know what the unmet need is, you know, as a separate item.
And I guess I don't know. I am not sure whether legally or, you know, ethically, how to best do this. But if it's sort of, I don't want it to appear to be an afterthought, but I don't want it to appear to be a condition of renewal. But I think that we need to advise our organizations as well as ourselves that we do intend to capture that information in a formal process. So whether it's an addendum or something to our communication, I'm not sure the best way to handle that. But just to kind of leave it at, you know, we're probably going to get that from you. I want them to know that we're also thinking about that. I want our agencies to know. So thank you.
We had talked at one time about adding that information to the report also, that on their quarterly reports, they provide us more data on how many people they have on a waiting list. And I think Corey, but anyway, let's not get distracted on that, because we now know we have a hard finish time here. So let's go back to how we want to proceed with the renewals.
I'm wondering, Hannah, whether are we locked into saying that the renewal will be at the current amount? Because I would guess that some of the agencies are going to tell us, you know, maybe they've even had to use sign-on bonus dollars to get staff and things like that. So they may feel like there's an increase in the amount they would ask for. Do we entertain that, or do we, I mean, as an extension mean you just extend it exactly as is, or could an entity that we currently fund say our costs have gone up by this X because we're doing more for benefits for staff or whatever, and so we would want to add to that? I mean, and again, I'm not suggesting one way or the other. I'm just trying to make sure we're clear on that.
And I think that that's, again, goes back to capturing that additional information, because I think my understanding was that these extensions would be based upon the amount we're currently funding, because that's what we've determined we anticipate receiving with the property tax dollars. So that, you know, I thought that's what we're going to say. We intend to extend it at this, but not preclude them from then sharing with us their need for more, to either continue even doing that at the current level or other needs that they might have.
Well, it becomes a negotiation at that point. I mean,
Yep.
I think we extend the offer to extend it at the current funding level. And then if they want to come back and say we need more, then we talk. Susan.
Well, and I think that during that negotiation phase, you know, as we move forward the next month or two, we're also going to get a better idea as to exactly how much we are going to get in property tax dollars, to be able to know how much we actually may have left over, if there's, you know, because EAV has gone up and that kind of thing. And also what other budgetary things that I know that with the Board of Health, when we were talking on the finances and having those little meetings with Jackie and Jessica, that I think that there's some other things that we can look at too, so we can go back and say when we're doing negotiations on that. But yeah, I would say go out with what we have, what we're funding today, and say, and yes, we know that almost every single one of them that we funded every year have come back and asked for a little bit more, you know, so we understand it. Or do we want to just say, okay, well, we're going to give everybody, you know, 1% more, you know, 5% more, hoping that whatever we get is going to cover that. I mean, there's a couple of different ways to look at it in that respect, you know, just like when vendors come to us with contracts and saying, well, this is 3% more than it was the last time we had this contract and when we're renewing this, kind of thing. So we can look at it a couple of different ways because like I said, we know that they'll probably come back and want more. And so just how do we want to go about that?
So it sounds like we have a couple of questions here, and I guess I'm going to kind of ask a little bit about timing, whether this discussion can lead to some meeting next month where we have more of an action item that would have some of these answered questions. We may have a better idea. I mean, given what the housing market is doing and how people are having to pay umpteen zillion more than asking prices, I have to believe the EAV is going up, So there should be, now the other issue is what the county board wants to do as far as rate. So, you may still have the same amount of money, just not, even if we have a higher EAV. I don't know if you have a sense, Susan, of where the county board might go with that, but and timing wise, when do we think we need to settle this in the event we have somebody who says, well, I don't want to really do this, I don't expect that, and to have time then to allocate if we have any unused dollars. I mean, we have contracts that run through the end of the year now, so any thoughts on when we might want to kind of reach out to our...
According to Amy's, our funding timeline, Amy, you wanted to have the applications go out. But you have right now, the applications are due August 23rd. So that's when you were hoping you were going to have them, everything kind of in your hand to look at for the coming year. So, and you want, yeah.
The timeline has sending them out like July 12th or somewhere around there that week, and then August 23rd or what you said, Corey. But just to also clarify that, that timeline was also originally created with the thought that we were following the full RFP. Here's all these questions. Here. So like if you guys, the way that you're talking now with, just a lot less questions than it was last year and extending or renewing the contract, I would be completely comfortable with that July 12th date going further out, because if we're not, that was to give the agencies time to really talk about what they needed to do and to do the application. But if it's going to be, it sounds like it'll be a lot less time consuming the way that you guys are talking about. So if that July 12th date needs to be pushed out, I'm completely comfortable with that.
Susan?
Yeah, and actually, probably by our August meeting, that we would know what the property tax dollars are going to be. We get the budget in the middle of September, the full board meeting in September, but the EAV and all that stuff, we can, those budgets are already being worked on and whatnot. So we'll have a better idea as to actually what that money is. So we can at least say, okay, we're expecting this much because this is what, Jessica's been working on with the budget with administration. And so, because actually that's what we've done in the past when with the Board of Health, we've actually looked at the budget in July and August as to what the health department administrators working on to submit to county administration for inclusion in the budget. So I would think that by our August meeting, we would be able to have those numbers, so that way we can say whether or not it's going to be flat, or if the number goes up, then we can say, well, we're going to increase everyone by this much, and things like that. So, and then go to the full Board of Health then in September with that kind of, with what our plan is. That's kind of a timeline that I can think would work well.
Sounds good to me. I think having more, better information about the dollars would be good. So you guys comfortable with that?
Yeah, should we use our July meeting then to talk about the ROE process and have somebody talk to Mark ahead of time with, first of all, I mean, we've got to draft what all the expectations are from them. And then maybe even have Mark come to our July meeting and, I mean, whatever you think, but I think we clearly need to nail that and get a firm answer for what we're doing. So the districts know what's happening and the agencies know about, staff.
Yeah, I don't know that Mark would need to come necessarily, but I think having a clear, he understands what this means administratively to them and whether they're willing to take that on and whether they feel that they have, I mean, it sounds like he has some general positive idea about it, but, to be very, very clear that this is a direction he would go.
I can work with Mark because I have to contact him and work with him anyway about the mental health action plan update and some of the things that are in there. So if you want, I can work with him to make sure he has an understanding as to what we're looking at in this process.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you, Susan.
Does Amy need to be a part of that? So since she intimately works with how that plays out with a similar model, I mean, is that important for Amy to be there to have? I'm just throwing that out that there might be some things that Amy's aware of that need to be mentioned too.
Yeah, I'll work with Amy once I talk to Mark initially, and then when, to try to get through some logistical kinds of things that Amy, needs to have and that kind of thing. I can, I'll just make sure he has a good understanding of what we're even looking at right now before he says, I mean, even though he's kind of said that he's going to be willing to do this, we want to make sure that he's going in with his eyes wide open. So.
Okay, Carla.
I was just thinking we may need to just renew the CHS contracts for this upcoming year, while that gives the ROE a little more of a chance to grapple with what I realize you guys have talked to him, but he's going to have to set up contracts with CHS, and then they're going to have to figure out how to do all this data. And our contracts don't include overhead, which is what you normally get in a grant. We don't have a clause in there that they can apply, that they can use some of the funding for overhead, which would decrease the amount of funding that is available for services.
Well, we do have I think it's allowed up to 15% for that. But I think maybe if it's suggested, if we get into serious saying, this is it, discussions in July, if we come back in August, we may, everybody may suggest that we just include those embedded schools contracts with the renewals also. Does anybody have anything else on this topic? All right, I think we have one action item, which is to approve the minutes from our, what was it? I'm trying to find the date of our last meeting. What was it?
June 3rd.
Okay, so we need to, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the June 3rd? For motion Buchanan, second. Anybody want to second the approval of the minutes? Second, Schaefer. Any discussion, corrections, modifications?
I just want to mention that I think sometimes in the minutes, it clearly spells out action that we recommended. And I don't know that always gets reflected into the next, then I don't know that we always take that forward. So I just want to make sure we get those minutes in a timely enough fashion so that anything that's a kind of an action item to go forward, we always make sure we bring that forward to the next, policy and funding meeting. So we have kind of continuity of moving forward. So
Very good.
Yeah.
Keep us on track.
So there's two things. There's a motion pending to approve the minutes. You want to have a roll call on that, and then Your suggestion's a great one, Corey. So,
Corey Tello,
Yes.
Carla Pohl,
Abstain.
Hannah Eisner,
yes,
Judy Buchanan,
Yes.
and Susan Schaefer.
Yes.
so Corey, maybe get the minutes a week ahead of our next meeting. I think you're right. Sometimes then we remember we have an action item for the meeting to come, is what you're saying.
Well, like in the minutes here, we had talked about getting a, written plan for mental health advice or mental health first aid. We had talked about, having that. So again, I just think we could have maybe actually, had that ready to go. So yeah, it would be great. Thank you.
I think that'd be helpful. So if we can make that request, Amy, I think a week would at least give us a chance so that we know that what the agenda, if there's an agenda item that needs to be there. Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
And also that anybody that says they're going to do something, that maybe there can be a report on what they did, so that, which I guess would be an agenda item, but so that, so it holds all of us accountable for if we say we're going to do something, we know we're coming into the next meeting with some sort of a report on what we did.
And for those folks outside of this group who are looking at our minutes, we need to remain accountable to the documents in terms of what we said we would do or present a report for. So I think it has even wider, a wider need.
I have one other agenda item I would like to add for next time, and it's Hannah, you and I talked about it the other day and we kind of went around in circles, is I want complete and total clarity of what the role of the Mental Health Advisory Board is and how we are, because I think each of us is looking at it somewhat differently. I think some see it as, I think there needs to be complete clarity so that we can be helpful with them. And because we've kind of moved around what their role and function has been over the last couple of years. And so I just would like this group, because it's the Policy and Funding Committee, I would like this group to come together and have consensus about what is the exact role, function, roles, responsibilities of Mental Health Advisory Board, particularly if there would be somebody chairing it that is not on the Board of Health. So I think and again, looking at the statute, it is not a policy setting board. It is very much a.
Because we got an 11 o'clock close here, Corey, we will put that on the agenda, absolutely. And,
Thank you very much. I will feel much better about that.
one other item, and to the point, and hang on, Judy, was we did ask last time about the change of personnel at CHS and asked them to provide us some information. And we did receive that. Amy did forward information to us. I don't know whether it needs to come to us with some addressing of, so I guess one, if there are questions you had, maybe forward them back to Amy about anything that they provided. I don't know that we need to take any action in terms of a budget amendment. I didn't look like they was looking at one, but anyway, just noting that. So we did at least get that follow-up done. So Judy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just very briefly, and thank you, Amy, for providing the Eleanor Partners Human Services material. I found that very impressive, and it's a really different way to look at human services, because so often we aren't in a position, those of us who are close to it, to really substantiate our impacts on our community. So this report is very good, so thank you. Do you know anything about the distribution of this report, Amy?
So that came from the Illinois Partnerships and Health Committee. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And so they really have a strong presence in the community to just really advocate, even at a legislative level, for for the nonprofits. I didn't realize there was nonprofits in McLean County. It was astounding. But anyways, also their main office. So McLean County is a satellite office with Holly Ambule, that is kind of the person that takes care of McLean County. But the home office is in Cook County. And so they really are, they collect this information, and they have a very close connection with, with legislation and lobbying and really trying to vocalize on state and national levels as far as like money. And so as far as distribution, Judy, it went to all of the nonprofits, and I'm a member or part of the Illinois Partners. And so that's how I received it. And then put on for your guys' information. But they also just compile all of that information and send it at state level, national level to like really advocate for the needs. It's not just to advocate, you know, like nonprofit agencies, it's to really advocate for the needs of our people, of the
Well,
people.
and that we really are a player in terms of the economy of our community.
Yeah.
So, but thank you. That was very
Yeah,
good.
county funding has a huge part. Yes, absolutely.
I got 3 copies of that so far.
Me
Make
too.
sure you extra have it.
Anything else before we adjourn? All right, thank you so much. Always good discussions. And I guess we'll see you at the Board of Health. Enjoy your day.
Yep, take care. Bye.